Welcome back to the Inverted Microphone. My name is Rees Goodall. That's Joa'o, Lara Jr. It's been a long time coming. It's been a very long time coming. We've been 3 months without a podcast, and now we're back to talk you through the run-in of the Premier League, the Champions League. No, I didn't miss my finger there. Nobody saw that. But we've got a lot to talk about. But most importantly, Joa'o, Lara Jr., how are you doing?
Very happy to be back. Once again, it's been a very long time. Once when the conversation was had of, hey, when are we starting this up again? I was very happy to see that we're finally able to be back with you guys. And what a week that we chose, right, to come back as well. Champions League semifinals just wrapped up today with Bayern and PSG. But we'll talk about that in a bit. But once again, very happy to be here with you guys.
Yeah, I'm not happy to be here with you, Joe. No, I'm just kidding. We have, again, as you mentioned, a lot to talk about Champions League, but also this week, the Premier League title race took a massive twist and turn yet again. Feels like every other week we're talking about that if we had a pod for the last month. But, excuse me, still, Champions League, PSG Arsenal, that's the final. Talk about that, break down the semifinals, Premier League title race. Who's going to win it? Premier League, Champions League, and Europa League race. Who's going to get the European spots? Where will Liverpool end up? And for the small but loud and kind of lovely, but not really, kind of like a gnat contingent of this podcast audience that are Tottenham Hotspur fans, will get into the relegation race for you as well. But Joa'o, Lara Jr., Bayern, PSG, overall thoughts?
I think that this was one of the best Champions League semifinal matchups I've seen in a while. 6-5 on aggregate. That first game was just something that you never see in these later stages of the Champions League. You never see this type of offensive action. And then in the second game as well, the first half was definitely full of those moments, but I just think it was so well rounded. I think these are two competitive teams that, once again, I think that there is a very, very high chance of a winner coming from this matchup, but I really enjoyed it as a neutral.
Yeah, what did you knock down there, Joao?
Don't worry about it. Let's keep on going. Reese, what were
Don't worry
your
about it.
thoughts?
My thoughts, I think I do have to agree that, I wouldn't be surprised if the winner ultimately came from this side of the matchup, if PSG ultimately did win the Champions League. I think these were two of the best, not the best, like overall best, but two of the best, probably two of the top three best teams in this year's Champions League. And we got to see that in the first leg. The two teams' attacking prowess in that game was really something to behold. It was nuts to see how efficient they were in the attack. Obviously, that comes with the caveat that Manuel Neuer had one of, if not the worst game of his professional football career. Obviously, he's getting up there in age. Kind of reminds me of Joa'o. He's older than me. He's kind of becoming washed as the day goes on. Neuer's dealing with it too. We're all going to deal with it at some point. So you either go through it early or you go through it late. Neuer's going through it late. So, and the second leg had a theme that reminded me a lot of last year's Champions League first leg semifinal, where Arsenal played host to PSG. Arsenal's getting up for it. It was a big moment for the club. And then Ousmane Dembele, handful of minutes in, scores a goal, quiets the crowd. Very similar moment in this game. Kvaratskhelia drives down the left-hand side. Beautiful little 1-2 in there as well. Crosses the ball in. Ousmane Dembele, wide open, finds the back of the net. Joel, my question to you is, if you're a Bayern fan, a Bayern player, whatever, and you see that, you see Ousmane Dembele wide open with that finish, knowing the quality of player he is, knowing he's a Ballon d'Or winner, how frustrating is that?
It's very right, because the play happens and you get scored on so early when your mission and your purpose is to attempt to come back. You're sort of hit with a bucket of cold water. Even then, if this were a boxing match, this would be a big, heavy hit in one of the first couple rounds. So it's super frustrating once again, but you can't leave Dembele open like that, and you can't try to be so aggressive against Vara because A, he's fast. B, he is just shifty. If you have him on a one-on-one against most fullbacks in the world nowadays, I think that he can compete with most of them. And that's just been the trend for Vada this season. He's been phenomenal. This PSG attack is just deadly, and Bayern should have seen it coming. But once again, there's nothing else you can do when you have that combination with those two players in Vada and Dembele.
And then moving forward into the game, there was that moment that is all over the internet. The handball, Joao Neves. I forget who on PSG kicks the ball toward him, but then it hits off Neves' hand. Referee does not point to the spot. Every single player wearing a Bayern shirt, every single fan was livid with that decision making. The decision was the right call. The IFAB laws of the game have it very clearly stated. If the ball is kicked by a teammate or headed by a teammate and it hits another teammate's hand, it is not a handball unless the ball proceeds to go into the back of the net or the player whose hand it hits gets up and scores. So it was the right decision. It is, if it was a Bayern player that kicks it, it's absolutely handball. I mean, I don't think it gets more clear hand to ball than what Joao Neves did. But by the letter of the law, that is not a handball. That was obviously one of the bigger moments of the game. Joao, what did you see from that?
And I totally thought the same thing when it happened. You sort of see the play go on, and you have to understand, right? Sometimes people let their emotions get in the way of what's the truth, of what's fact, of what's rule, what's law, whatever you want to use to describe it. And it's just, that's not the way the game works. And that's the issue with a lot of things nowadays, especially in the media. People let their emotions get in the way. Maybe they were affiliated with a team of some sort, or even then they haven't brushed up with the laws of the game, which are always changing, and it's obviously not pleasing, right? And you're desperate. You're desperate if you're Bayern because you want that opportunity to go up in the game, or I think it was to tie the game at this point. So it's very difficult, but when it's a right call like that, there's nothing else you can do about it.
Yeah, certainly a frustrating moment. It was in the first half there. Second half, Bayern continued to pile on the pressure. They controlled much of the ball. And then Harry Kane scores a goal that can be considered nothing but a consolation goal. It's Bayern's they only have one loss in their last 29 home Champions League matches. This is simply a nuts record. While PSG, reading this stat, the Champions League top scorers this season with 43 goals, too shy of the all-time record. That is nuts in its own right. You think about the quality of players, the quality of sides that have taken on this Champions League, taken on some of the top sides, but also conquered it. For them to be the highest scoring team is a nuts record. I'd be moving on to the other semifinal, and this is a good transition, is PSG's high fire attack. You go to another game where I think a lot of people misinterpreted how this game was going to go. That's being Arsenal Atletico Madrid. I think a lot of people expected it to be a much uglier two fixtures than it was. To be honest, I've really enjoyed watching both games. It was two games where there were end-to-end moments. There were moments where the team settled into low blocks. It had everything within the 180 minutes played. Joao, what were your thoughts on Arsenal knocking off Atletico?
Again, I think it's very deserved. Both teams were very similar in play styles, and we sort of saw that as the tournament went on. But again, I just think, yes, you're gonna have your great Bayern PSG moments, your great games. Hey, 5-4, that's absolutely amazing. But other times you're gonna have these sort of uh, you could say chess matches or even then boxing matches where they're trying to feel each other out, and you don't want to make a mistake because hey, if you do too much against one of these teams, they will go ahead and try to capitalize on that. So I mean, it was very carefully executed, but once again, I think both series were just great to watch, and I love this edition of the Champions League. I really do, just because there's been a lot of great moments, and the fact that it's carrying on to those latter stages, and we're not getting either A, complete domination by a team, and B, just these close games. It's always something you could appreciate.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very competitive games as well. Very no team's really running away with it in any of the stages. Um, talking about Arsenal more in the second leg of their match, I was very impressed with Arsenal's approach in this game. The decision to put Miles Lewis-Skelly in the midfield over the weekend paid dividends for Arsenal. They knocked off Fulham, and then they do it again in the Champions League, and the kid does not look out of place at all. He looked like he had been playing Champions League football for 10 years at this point. I was very impressed by him. And another guy who the stat sheet won't say he had a good performance. I mean, he missed a chance there that, to be fair, was a difficult one. The ball bounces up right as he's going to kick it. This is Victor Gyökeres. Victor Gyökeres, when we last had the podcast, was a guy that I talked a lot about how he needs to figure it out, but also the team around him needs to figure it out. Figure out how Victor Gyökeres needs to be deployed. What I saw from Victor Gyökeres against Atletico Madrid was nothing shy of impressive. The way that he moved off the ball, you look at every single time an Atletico defender or Joa'o Oblak had the ball, Victor Gyökeres was there rushing them down, pushing the pace, trying to get them to misplace a pass. It was just kind of textbook pressing in that matter, but he was just kept going. His hold up play and the build up to one of Arsenal's chances was incredible as well. And again, for a guy who I have talking a lot about negatively, it's time I signal my praises to him because the form that he's in lately has been so good. Um, I really didn't think I'd be talking about him like this a few months ago.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, for the amount of times I was put on the spot and asked, hey, is he a flop? Where's he at? What do you think he's doing? It's great to see those changes. And for a striker of his profile, I think that off the ball movement, it's very important and it pays its dividends. And I think that it's going to be very important against a very intense squad like PSG. You want them to force those mistakes that come very rarely, right? Just because this is a team that can pass the ball well. And you know what? Now that we're talking about the topic of PSG and Arsenal, May 30th, right? Budapest,
Yes.
Champions League final. What do you expect to see, Rees? And who do you think ultimately walks off with it?
I expect this final to be a very cagey affair, and I cannot stress this enough. I think Arsenal will be a team that will come into that match extremely prepared. But, one thing that needs to be considered with this side is their defensive track record, right? They've only conceded 6 goals in the entire Champions League. They've kept 9 clean sheets through the 14 games. Of the 6 goals they've conceded, 2 came against Kairat Almaty on the last league stage game, which was an absolute joke of a fixture for those that had to watch it. But I think Arsenal's defensive and midfield spine, especially with the change of the midfield trio, turning it into Eberechi Eze, Miles Lewis-Skelly, and Declan Rice, I think that is a team that can shut down any team's attack. They played Bayern Munich in the league stage. They held him to a goal. It was a Harry Kane. No, sorry, it was Lennart Karl who scored that goal. I really do back that Arsenal side holding their own defensively. Though, with that being said, though, you cannot count out this PSG attack. There's a reason they've scored almost the most goals in a Champions League run. Yes, has 2 more games, but still, who cares? They're scoring goals at will. They've got attacking quality. They're able to rest guys because Ligue 1 is practically wrapped up. And with that being said, I think this is a game where it's hard to predict a winner, but I think it's easy to predict where the game will end. This is a game that is going 120 minutes. And I wouldn't be shocked if it goes to penalties, but it for certain is going to extra time in my mind.
I like that. And you know what? People may say sometimes it's very difficult to predict, and it's very difficult to talk about a team that you may support or you may watch or may follow, vice versa, whatever it is. But I totally agree there. Again, I see two very similar teams in level and intensity. The way Paris was able to press today, it was so organized. It was so precise. It was so effective against this Bayern squad that Manuel Neuer had to be quick. He had to be quick. He had to be off the ball because there was always someone going towards him. My only issue right now, once again, you talked about Gyökeres being able to make those runs, being able to do all these things off the ball. Harry Kane is a similar profile striker, I want to say, and it's very difficult because William Pacho just an absolutely phenomenal player, and it's just if he's able to do something against Harry Kane, who's had a great season with Bayern, we can't deny it. What's to say that he can't do the same against Victor Gyökeres, who is barely starting to find his way now at the end of the season?
I have two caveats to that. I don't think that Harry Kane is that similar of a profile to Victor Gyökeres. Harry Kane likes to drive himself into the midfield and assist with build-up, much to my chagrin. I absolutely hate watching him do that. I think that is something that should not be in his game whatsoever. I think he should be more of a Victor Gyökeres, especially for England, right? But I think also the other caveat is I think I wouldn't describe Victor Gyökeres' turn in form as recent. I'd say it's pretty much been since we stopped making the podcast during the hiatus. I think obviously the goals have been a bit sparing, but I think it's too. He brings much more than the goals, and it's definitely turned up a notch recently.
That's for sure, and it's just I don't want to say it's I don't want to say it's sudden. Yes, it's gradual, and that's why I say towards the end of the season, because towards the beginning of the season, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd be saying, "Hey, who is going to play instead of Victor Gyökeres?" Because Victor Gyökeres is just not that guy. And
Yes.
don't clip that. I know you're a little sneaky like that. I'm just joking, by the way. But with that being said, it's just there's gonna be not fireworks in Budapest because obviously when you hear fireworks, it's high scoring match, and I don't think this is going to. I don't think this is going to be high scoring. It's going to be very tactical. It's going to be very stressful for both parties watching. PSG fans, Arsenal fans, especially with what's at stake. 139 years without a European trophy, and finally you have this opportunity.
That's not true. It's 139 years without a. The Arsenal's never
Or
won a
what
Champions League. They've won European
exactly
trophies. They've
without
won.
without a Champions League,
We've won
without a
multiple Cup
Champions League,
Winners' Cups.
without a Champions League, the pinnacle of European modern day football.
Yes.
139 years. It's how do you feel? And because I know, look, I know multiple Arsenal fans. I talk to them. I try to see their perspective as well. How do you feel finally being in this position and watching this team all these years? Now that you're in this position as a fan, I want you to take a step aside from podcasts, whatever. How do you feel?
Okay. I've had this conversation with my dad quite a bit. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's fully set in that Arsenal is going to be in the Champions League final, right? I think after the Bournemouth loss, I've changed my perspective to just one game at a time. You can't really be looking too far ahead. And that's pretty much like the only thing I'm thinking about with Arsenal this weekend against West Ham. And I think though on the joy of it, like I think the last Monday and Tuesday were without a doubt two of the best days of my football fandom career. And this is a good transition if you want. When Man City, obviously they drew and that kind of soured it a little bit, but still it's still such a sweet moment. But when they went up, when Everton went up 3-1 in that game, I mean that was nuts. I mean that was the you think the title's gone at that point, and then all of a sudden it's handed right back to you. And then yesterday, Tuesday, I think it just felt like something that I never thought I'd ever actually see. You know, I like last year when I saw Arsenal play in the Champions League semifinal. Actually, really even before that, the quarterfinal against Real Madrid. I thought that was probably as good as it's ever going to get in the Champions League, just because that's kind of who we are. We're kind of been the Champions League folders. Arsenal have played the most games in the Champions League without ever winning it. So I just thought, okay, this is the peak. And then we go farther and then we win. So I mean it's incredible. But we'll see.
And I mean, yeah, speaking about the Premier League, right? Transition. Why don't we go over first of all the table because it's been a
Yes.
while,
It
and
has
uh,
been.
and then we'll go into fixtures. But top of the table, City with 1 game in hand. How are you feeling in terms of the league?
It's difficult. So Arsenal are 5 points clear. Man City have a game in hand. It's in Arsenal's control. Arsenal have to win their next 3 games, barring City don't drop points to win the league. And again, that's a crazy position to think of. It's one that you want to be positive in, but you've also seen it happen before where it goes away from you. I think if again, the mentality of the players this season, the mentality of guys like Bukayo Saka coming back from injury, rushing back from injury because he didn't want this to be a campaign like many of the ones before. The guys like Declan Rice in midfield who just keep going. Victor Gyökeres in there as well. It's hard not to kind of envision yourself in that game against Palace lifting the trophy. That's a long way away. There's 270 minutes worth of football to be played between now and then. And I think Arsenal, though, are in, without a doubt, the best position they've ever been in to win the league in Mikel Arteta's tenure, the caveat there. And I think when they lost to City, I think that was many, myself included, thought that was the final nail in the coffin. You give City an advantage on anything heading into the run in, they're going to take it. So that draw against Everton was one of the most wild things, I think I've ever watched.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that, and it's just a team like City, especially in these stages, and especially when you feel like they finally found their mojo and everything is clicking, and Haaland scoring again. Obviously, Ryan Cherky, what an absolute player, just tearing up the Premier League as he goes. Again, unexpected, but it's very difficult. But that's the beauty of football, right? You never know what you're gonna get, and that was one of those games.
Yeah, I certainly agree. Just the way it was 3-1. It was 1-0 at halftime to Man City. Everton charged back in the second half, went up 3-0, and then in typical Everton fashion as of late, they blow it in stoppage time, which, hey, you can't get everything you want in life, right? So I think that in fairness to them, no, I lost my train of thought there. But I think looking at the games ahead, Man City definitely have the harder games to go. They have to play Brentford. They have to play Palace midweek. They have to play Bournemouth away. They have Aston Villa on the final day. All of those teams are going to be playing for something. Mind you, Palace might not or probably won't be because they're going to be prioritizing the European football a week later. But Aston Villa, they're fighting for a Champions League spot, as is Bournemouth, who are also trying to hold on to their Europa League spot. At Brentford's in that mix as well. It is not an easy run of fixtures. While Arsenal have West Ham, who's in the relegation zone, Burnley, who's in the relegation zone, and Crystal Palace on what would be their last game of the season before the Europa Conference League final, which is a game that I know they would not care one single thing about. They'd be excited. They'd be pretty much wherever the Europa Conference League final is, all the players would already be there. So I think, again, if you're Arsenal, you have to keep the confidence. You have to keep going. You and you just I think if you're Arsenal also, you have to be thankful that Bukayo Saka is back as well. I mean, the last 2 games, He has been incredible. And Joao, you have spoken about many of times on this podcast about how much of a game changer that Bukayo is for Arsenal, and how when times get rough, you lean on a guy like him, and he's going to get you through those moments. And he's done it yet again for this Arsenal team.
That's for sure. And I mean, we've spoken a lot about 1 and 2. Let's sort of move on because it's a close race between 3, 4, 5. Um, it's very difficult, I think, to see Manchester United get sort of knocked off their spot right now. They're, what, 6 points clear from Liverpool and Villa right now. If I'm not wrong, if I can do math, that is correct.
You
And
can.
let's just talk about this squad real quick because it is a tremendous turn from last season. This team, man, it's just everything has sort of fallen into place for most of these games, and obviously there's that occasional hiccup, but hey, it's Man United, it's destined to happen. Especially like that game against Leeds was just absolutely horrible. Just to see them bounce back, beat Chelsea, beat Brentford in that sort of nail biter, and then just hang on against Liverpool. I'm very excited about this squad, and if they're able to spend money in the midfield in this summer, maybe get another defensive piece and hope that Sheshko continues to bloom. I would be very excited to see this Manchester United squad for next year. And again, back in Champions League football. So I mean, if you're a Manchester United fan, you should be pretty happy right now because hey, a year ago you were not in this position.
I think that hearing all of the things that are going well for Manchester United at the moment leads me to one question and one question only. It's a question that has been asked repeatedly on this podcast. Michael Carrick, in or out? Joel, last time we had the podcast, you were talking about how your old fashioned quote, your favorite quote, wait and see. Um, well, we waited 3 months and we saw. What are your thoughts, in or out?
I I'm not convinced. I'm really not. I think it's out. I think that these players that are on the pitch, and I think that the passion they've been demonstrating, especially like Casemiro sort of rejuvenated and showed good bits of football in this latter half. I think that a lot of it has been the players. I'm just not convinced again. If you want to be at the helm of Manchester United, yes, you win these big games. You've beat all of these great teams that are obviously at the top half of the table, and they were not doing that a year ago. But you have to be consistent. You have to be able to offer something and bring something to the table. But this brings up another question for United, right? Who do you bring in? And even then, if United wants to bring in something or someone, whatever you want to say it is, it has to be soon because you don't want to go into preseason without a manager or with an interim because you're just going to be in a terrible position. You sort of set yourself up again. So if they can't get someone soon, hey, keep Carrick. He's been doing the job. They've been playing some good football here and then. But if you're gonna get someone, get them now. Get them soon.
I am glad that that's your opinion. We haven't really spoke about that in our 3 month hiatus, so I'm glad that that is your opinion for a number of reasons. First off, I think a lot of Manchester United's success in the league has been because they're not playing every 3 to 4 days. They had the FA and Carabao Cup disasters getting eliminated in their very first hurdle there. No European football. It is the best thing for a club in a kind of a state of Manchester United where you can just focus on the league. You might have a week and a half in between games, but you're just going to keep going, keep going. You'll be well rested. And, I've seen a graphic floating around. I think it's since Carrick's been appointed, Manchester United have the most points in the Premier League. Now, again, you look at the two teams at the top, they've been playing twice a week, 3 times a week, every single week. Manchester United have had 9 days between games, 2 weeks between games. It was that. What was that? It was that between that Bournemouth and the Leeds game, it felt like 6 months between then. And so I think a lot that deserves a big asterisk next to what Manchester United has done this season. Now, guys they could potentially appoint. The good news for them is there are some guys that are going to be on the market. Andoni Areola is looking to leave Bournemouth. Bournemouth sixth in the league right now. Be I would actually rate that addition compared to some of the other names that will be on that list. And then my final point on the Manchester United is as good as you're gonna be in the Champions League, barring no, you're gonna be in the Champions
Yeah,
League by
secure.
what I can count. Um, that is something that is obviously a good thing. You're not going to complain about being in the Champions League because of the financial impact that that will have. However, I will say that it's not always a good thing to get Champions League this early into the project. We've seen Aston Villa, we've seen Newcastle twice now get into the Champions League where they're not quite there. They're like the third or fourth best team, but quite a ways away from the top two. Now they have to have 8 extra fixtures, 2 more if they make the playoff, 2 more if they go to the round of 16. And hopefully for Manchester United's sake, the Carabao Cup doesn't end in one game. The FA Cup, they go a bit further. All of a sudden, your 40-game season is turning into a 54-game season. And how do you cope with that?
I totally okay. I'm in agreement with you there, and I think it's going to be much more difficult. And here's the thing: for some reason, the physio at Man United has not been the most consistent when there's competition, because there's always been someone injured. There's always been someone out. Oh, there's this big game against Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool, whoever you want to throw a big name out there, and we're without one of the best players in the squad. It's very difficult now. Getting Champions League, they're certainly the project. I think that with the base that they have, which is somewhat of a younger squad, obviously in each position, there's someone under 25. I think that's great motivation for them, even if they don't go far in the Champions League. Because if things go the way that they are, obviously they've been there while this team has been in the mud, while this team has been humiliated, while this team has been the laughing stock of the Premier League. You go, you have a great season. You go, you compete at the highest pinnacle of club football in Europe, which is the Champions League. This has to fuel some hunger, some ambition, some something, especially for guys like Kobe Mainoo, especially for guys like, sure, he hasn't been there a good while, or he hasn't been there for a good while, Aiden Heaven, and even then, Sen Laman as well. It's gonna be very difficult, right? But I think it's a step in the right direction. I think it's a good step as well, because if everything doesn't go perfectly next season, it's okay. Because the expectation is not for you to go and dominate and go and win it all, but it's definitely going to be a good test for the squad. And once again, they spend the money, they bring in a Prem proven manager. It could be an exciting project, and it could be something just exciting to watch overall as the season goes on.
Yeah. But and I think the worst part about Manchester United finishing third is realistically that's their ceiling next year as well, because I struggle to believe that Arsenal and Manchester City would have such a sudden drop off next year that they'd go from title contenders to not being in the top two. And then Manchester United, realistically, they're not going to be able to take that big of a leap between now and the conclusion of next season to consider themselves title challengers. And then I just think it's a difficult spot to be in, even with all the success. I don't envy it. So again, the Joa'o Lara Jr. quote, we'll have to see how the tide comes in or not. But moving on, fourth place, Liverpool, fifth place, Aston Villa, tied on points, level on goal difference. Aston Villa, they've got a Europa League to play for. Liverpool, they have just pride to play for at this point, and just kind of see if they can hold on to fourth. There is a very they do play each other before the end of the season, but there is also a scenario where Aston Villa finishes sixth and they get Champions League because they win the Europa League. So if you're Brentford, I think they play Liverpool. I like there's some scenario where Brentford could get that by securing, like, I don't know. I can't remember. I'm not going to talk about it for too much. But Liverpool, It's been a disastrous season for them. Arne Slot, many people calling for him to be sacked. You spend as much money as you do, it's hard not to look at that. But you also look at some of the injuries they've had. Allison has missed significant time. Connor Bradley is out for the season. Wataru Endu's missed significant time. Mo Salah has been in and out of form, and he's hurt now. Alexander Isak, he is big time hurt. What was it? Broken tibia, labia? Can't remember. And then Hugo Ekitike tore his Achilles. So a lot of things went wrong for them this season. More things went wrong than went right. So are you Arne Slot in or out?
I'd give him one more season. I really would. I just think that it's very difficult once again to gauge with the injuries and everything. I think that the squad has definitely had their bright spots, and he's been able to guide them through sort of those difficult valleys and mountains, and especially with all the criticism that the squad has received, especially players like Virgil van Dijk and Ibrahima Konate. I mean, I'd give him one more season. I think that patience is key. I think that if Liverpool is willing to spend, not as much as last transfer window, because that was a lot. That was a lot of money, and obviously to not get success and results. But hey, they've been known to produce great academy products. Try to bring someone up. Try to get some good valued transfers. And I think this Liverpool squad could compete. But once again, it's if they can stay healthy, if they can stay good. But even then, that's a very big what if in this situation.
Yeah, I agree. I think though is my caveat to that whole argument is I think you have to give Slot a very very short leash for next season, because if you start off bad, you're kind of gliding through the season. You're maybe in like, I don't know, 10th after 8 games. I think you have to pull the trigger and sack him, just because it has been absolutely disastrous. Chelsea, another big six side. They have been nothing shy of awful lately. They've lost their last 5 league games. They are in the FA Cup final for what it's worth. Since our last podcast, they've only won twice in the league, which, sorry, not even. They've won once in the league. Shows how much of a disaster it is. They obviously lost Enzo Maresca. That was a very weird situation. Not a good situation at all. Then you bring in Liam Rossinier, who I actually liked his ideas, but I think he was too young. I think he's thrown into the fire. And now he has been sacked. And then Callum McFarlane, he was the assistant for Rossinier. He was the head manager for, I think, one game, the one they drew against City. He's now back. Chelsea, disastrous. Another team where I think, again, when I mentioned earlier the Manchester United qualifying for Champions League can be a bit more positive than it actually is. Chelsea qualified for the Champions League last season, and it hurt them a lot more than it helped them. They had a difficult tie, to be fair. They got knocked out by PSG, but the fixture congestion piled up with the FA Cup run. They've obviously got a ginormous squad, but still, when you're playing that many games, it's never going to help you. And now they're in ninth with real danger of finishing in the bottom half if they can't find a win sooner rather than later. Joa'o, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think their only purpose in the Champions League was really to have fun against Barca that one game, that 3-0, and then just drop off from the face of the earth. Chelsea was put in a tough predicament from the beginning, especially with Maresca leaving, and then just the injuries this season. They've been consistent throughout the whole year, so that's very difficult for them. And for someone who at the beginning of the season I had winning, or if not being very close up top to the Premier League table, what a fall from grace. What a fall from grace. But once again, it's so difficult. But when they appointed Rossinier, just like how when Spurs appointed what's his name, Iago Tudor,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't feeling it. Why? Not prem proven. And I mean, Rossinier, it's very much different. He had somewhat of a consistency with Strasbourg, but after that, it's just to manage a very popular, very recognized, a team that's going to get a lot of attention. It's very difficult, and you're not going to get off the rip. And I hope one day he's able to come back to the Premier League and do it with another side. But it's just he was put in a tough one to begin with as well.
Yes, he certainly was, and it's the Blue Co connection there that got him the job at Chelsea. And Chelsea fans not happy with Blue Co at all. Obviously, again, not a great spot to be in if you're Chelsea. Now they're setting themselves up for a run next year where they're only going to play like 44 games because they're not going to have European football. They might go far in a couple cups, but they won't go too far. And they'll finish like fourth because they'll go like 2 weeks between Premier League matches, and it'll be a fluky season, and we'll just watch the cycle repeat. So something to keep an eye on, certainly. Move down to the relegation race. Burnley, Wolverhampton Wanderers. It was fun seeing you. I predicted them going down. I'm pretty certain because they were awful from the get-go. You could tell that those two sides had no business being in the Premier League, and thank God we were all proven right. However, the race for 18th is pretty much down to two teams, barring something chaotic. Those two teams, Tottenham Hotspur, West Ham United. West Ham United in the relegation zone as of now. They certainly have the less favorable matchup this weekend. They play Arsenal. Tottenham play Leeds. West Ham have Arsenal home, Newcastle away, and then Leeds at home to end the season. As for Tottenham, they have a difficult stretch, but it's fluky. They play Leeds at home. They play Chelsea away, which, to be fair, is a derby game that can get very, very heated, and Chelsea would absolutely love to put put Tottenham in the relegation zone. And then they have Everton at home on the final day. Tottenham at home is not something that you can really look at and be like, oh, we're at home that day, because they have been awful at home. Their only wins this season have come away from home. I mean, they've won twice at home this entire season. They've won 9 times. In fact, they've only won twice since our last podcast, and they were the last 2 games. So not a pretty run for them at all. Joa'o, 3 games to go. 9 points maximum for each team. Who do you think is the one that goes down?
Again, my mind is telling me something. My heart is telling me something else. If we're looking at this in a realistic manner, I think that this Arsenal game for this West Ham squad comes at a very difficult time, and it's just if they drop points here, and Tottenham is starting to get momentum. So if they can keep it going, and trust in RDZ's project, and sort of see how it goes from there, I wouldn't be surprised if Tottenham stays up. With that being said, what is it? 2 fixtures at home. It's very possible that they drop points there, and if
Both sides have 2 fixtures at home, just to clarify.
But I think it's more difficult for Tottenham to win at home than West Ham.
Yes.
So it's just, if that's a determining factor, and especially with 2 clubs that have been, sort of trending up as the season has ended in Everton and Leeds, it can go either way. It can go either way. Would it be very funny if Tottenham went down? Yes, I think it would be, because their fans talk a lot, and their fans are very inflated, and I think you can say that about a lot of fan bases. It's not that I'm specifically picking on Tottenham right now. Sorry,
no, we should always pick on Tottenham.
Again, it can go either way. But if I had to choose one, I'd probably go for West Ham going down. But there's reasonable arguments for either one to go down, really.
I agree. It's such a coin flip. I do think, though, this is one that's not going to be settled this weekend. It's not going to be settled next weekend. It's going to be settled at the very last kick of the very last game of this season, just because I can see a realistic world where the two teams, Tottenham and West Ham, match each other the next two games. Probably two losses, but maybe a draw. And even then, if Tottenham pick up a point against Chelsea, let's say, and West Ham lose their next two games, West Ham's not down. They've got a game. They've got 2 points back. West Ham win. Tottenham lose to Everton. All of a sudden, West Ham's back up. So again, the Joa'o quote, we'll see how the wind blows.
How the tumbleweed rolls.
How the tumbleweed rolls.
How the wheel spins.
I was gonna say that one, yeah. How the egg cooks. I'm only saying that because unsponsored. There's an Einstein Bros Bagels ad on my FOTMOB right now, and it made me hungry. So let's move it on to this side of the pond. Joa'o Lara Jr., the Mexican national team. Some say the most put together national team. Some say the most well-ran organization in world football. Walk me through everything that's going on down in Mexico.
That's just a tease at this point. But here's the thing, right? If you're a Mexico national team fan, it's sort of like that one meme where the dog is just sitting in the kitchen where everything is burning, and they're like, everything is fine. I think there's more anticipation to the World Cup that's making this sort of pass over, but with league executives and especially the head coach, Javier Aguirre, it's very difficult to sort of deal with what's going on right now, especially in the moment. So essentially, this past week, the players selected for the Mexican national team were given a 6-day rest period, which ended today. Players were supposed to report to their clubs today. Toluca is currently playing against LAFC in the CCC CONCACAF Champions Cup, and they're missing two of their best players, Alexis Vega, one of the best wingers in Liga MX, and Jesus Gallardo, one of the best left backs in Liga MX. Toluca asked Javier Aguirre, hey, can we take these players? Javier Aguirre said, yes, you can take them for this leg, but we need them back because blah, blah, so and so. This caused the team behind me, Chivas de Guadalajara, to sort of lose it. Because right now they are in their playoff format, or La Liguilla in Spanish, that's how you say it. They went down 3-1 last week against Tigres, and they are missing five of their best players. So what did the owner from Chivas do? He called all five of them up and say, hey, we need you back here for training today. If Toluca is going to take their players back after we had a formal agreement between all Liga MX teams, you're coming back as well. Club America, and then Cruz Azul ended up following suit. And this is where we're at right now. But there have been recent developments in the past couple hours before we started this podcast where the coach said that as long as these players don't play in these games and they come back today, they'll be fine to play in the World Cup squad. But if any of those players from any of those teams violates and breaches sort of the agreement that they had, they will not be seeing a World Cup stadium this year.
Joao, you broke down the situation. Give me your thoughts.
It's very difficult, right? But when you make an agreement, what do you expect it? Where do you expect it to go? You expect for it to be followed. You expect for it to be agreed upon because it's literally in the name. It's an agreement. In no way or shape or form should the coach of the national team be saying, hey, yeah, take two of our players. Because if Alexis Vega or Jesus Gallardo gets injured against LAFC, mind you, an American club, you never know. There could be spite, there could be hate, there could be whatever. You have to think of all of the possibilities. If something happens to them there, it doesn't go back to Toluca for asking for their players back, because at the end of the day, those players. It goes back to the coach, and it goes back to whoever authorized for those players to go back to that team. Now, in my opinion, what those clubs did in calling back their players, I think it's respectable because there's a clear violation and breach of an agreement that was made between everyone.
Question: does Mexico have a friendly? Like what? Why? I'm so confused by all of this.
So Mexico they have their famous sort of concentration. In Spanish, it's concentración, so it's the absolute same thing. period where they grab all their players, usually a month before, a couple months before the World Cup, and they train together. They get sort of they mesh with each other for around a month to make sure that A, chemistry is at the utmost highest, and B, they're all fit and no one's getting injured, and they're making sure that everyone, is ready and safe to play. So that's sort of what goes on there. But they have announced, I think it's 3 international friendlies before the World Cup starts. I'd have to look at them because I don't remember them off the top of my head. Actually, I just found them right here. They play Ghana, Australia, and Serbia, May 22nd, May 30th, and June 4th. Before that, obviously, first game of the World Cup, June 11th against South Africa. But it's very difficult, and the way Mexican football is run and the way things are done, again, it's been very weird. A lot of football pundits, a lot of ex-players, managers, owners, whatever, have talked about this, and again, I think what they have to say is very true, and it's similar to what I just ended up telling you guys right now.
Joa'o, I think the most baffling point that was presented to me in this learning session for me, I knew bits and pieces of it, but I didn't know all of it, is the finding out that Mexico does a month-long quote-unquote well, that's not the right phrasing to use, but a month-long camp to concentrate. If you rearrange it, you could find yourself in trouble. But why? You're not England, you're not Argentina, you're not France, you're not Germany. You can't get past the round of 16. The fifth game. What is it? El Quinto Partido.
Again, things with the way stuff has been ran has been odd for a very long time. This is why we always find ourselves in predicaments like this, because fans are always told, yeah, there's an agreement that's going to be followed. There's going to be stuff that's going to be done to make sure that everyone is on the same page and same agreement. And somebody comes and like, hey, can we take our player back? And it's like there's always something going on. And I mean, it's been going on since Hugo Sanchez was at Real Madrid, freaking tens of years ago.
Yeah, that's
So I mean, again, is it questionable? Sometimes, yes. Have people gotten in trouble in these camps? Yes. 2014 World Cup in Brazil. What did they do when they got to Brazil? Parties and a lot of things that we can't talk about the show because we try to keep it as family friendly as possible. But it's very difficult. But Rees, we've talked about the southern neighbor of the United States. Tell me, what's going on with the Stars and Stripes right now?
To be fair, it's not nearly as controversial as what's going on in Mexico. But I will say it might be equally as stupid. Landon Donovan, Tim Goodall, my dad's favorite person on this planet. There's nobody he loves more than Landon Donovan.
He loves Landon Donovan more than you.
Yeah, absolutely, because Landon Donovan is what we call a great person. Unfiltered Soccer podcast. He hosts it with Tim Howard. Tim Howard, I like Tim Howard. I think Tim Howard is a good person. I don't think that I have a just pure hatred for Tim Howard. But hey, what can you say? On their podcast, they spoke about the U.S. men's national team squad for this World Cup, and both of them made the case to leave Johnny Cardoso, who plays for Atletico Madrid, off the World Cup squad in favor of Sebastian Berhalter and Christian Roldan. Now, Christian Roldan has been playing very well in MLS, to be fair to him. And Sebastian Berhalter showed last year in Gold Cup that he is a very good midfielder for this U.S. men's national team. But Johnny Cardoso is playing in the Champions League, is the 4th American ever to play in a Champions League semifinal, and is a very, very key piece to Atletico Madrid's success. It was one of the most bizarre takes I have ever heard in My life. Johnny Cardoso is a guy that could have played for Brazil, and there is a handful, albeit again a handful, but still, of Brazilian fans that wish he could play for them because he's a midfield that would raise their level. Dropping Johnny Cardoso for Christian Roldan is absolutely nuts. There are no other words to describe that. Now, thank God they're not in charge, so we'll see. Christian Roldan is not. I mean, to be fair, he did have a very bad game in against Sporting KC, but he's not that good. So again, World Cup coming up. We'll have a lot of episodes about it. Joa'o will have an episode when Mexico gets knocked out in the round of 32 because they can't make it to the fifth game. We'll have an episode the day after when the U.S. gets knocked out in the round of 32 because Christian Pulisic decides he just doesn't care. Yeah, misses a sitter, doesn't care, and then whines to the media about Lord knows what. So that's going to do it for this Inverted Microphone episode. It wasn't fun. I missed our hiatus. I know that this export's going to take a minute and a half, so I'm going to cry. But you know what they say, Joa'o. Where can they follow you on Twitter?
They can follow me at Joa'o Lara Jr. on Twitter.
Yeah, very creative username. Guess what mine is? At Rees Goodall. So very creative. I was going to create a Twitter for the podcast. I forgot to do so. So we'll do that next week. It's a beautiful game, but it's a much more beautiful game when
Christian Roldan gets called up to the U.S. men's national team and wins it all for the first time for this beautiful country.
I was not going to say that, but sure. Goodbye, everybody.